The Sun's Veto is a short story by Thomas Hardy. The tragic story is from a focalized third-person omniscient narrator. Throughout The Sun's Veto, Sophie's life is tightly controlled by her husband and her son. She accepts her powerlessness and complies with her son's unfair demands because she feels inferior to him. She lacks the freedom to live life on her own terms and feels obliged to obey her son's every command. A crucial moment in the story is when we witness Sophie standing up from her wheelchair to meet Sam. This symbolizes the newfound freedom and happiness that Sam brings into her life. The central conflict in the story revolves around Sophie's desire for happiness, especially in her relationship with Sam, and her sense of duty as a mother to her son, Randolph. Her revived romance with Sam offers her a glimpse of happiness and freedom, which once seemed impossible as a widow. The possibility of marrying Sam fills her with courage, and she even gathers the strength to attend a cricket match to ask for her son's approval. Though, Randolph, driven by his obsession with social status, opposes his mother remarrying someone of lower social class, prompting her to be disheartened and confining herself to her house. She passes away shortly after showing signs of improvement. Her despair was so overwhelming that she lost hope for any happiness and succumbed to pain and sorrow. Randolph also faces a conflict between his family duty, particularly to his father's memory, and his desire for social prestige. At times, it's unclear whether his objections stem from duty or personal ambition. While Sophie grapples with a prolonged internal conflict, Randolph sidesteps it by failing to recognize his duty to alleviate his mother's unhappiness. In The Sun's Veto, social class distinctions play a significant role, which leads to isolation, loneliness, and the characters' lives being greatly influenced by these distinctions. Mr. Twycott, Sophie's husband, is a good man but is also constrained by societal judgments. He marries Sophie, a woman of lower status, and even moves away from her childhood home to avoid being shamed by society. This move only makes Sophie feel more insecure about her background, and she struggles to fit into upper-class society. Sophie's attempts to conform to societal expectations, such as improving her grammar and appearance by curling her hair, still don't make her feel like she belongs in the upper class. She constantly feels inferior to her husband and son, internalizing her ill treatment and blaming herself for being of lower status. The story illustrates how social class distinctions can hinder human bonds and limit happiness. Mr. Twycott's actions reflect his struggle to fit his wife into the mold of upper-class society. Despite his affection for Sophie, he can't fully accept her as she is. Sophie, on the other hand, is content with her working-class life, but society's harsh judgments and her son's disapproval weigh her down. The story demonstrates how conformity to social conventions can limit one's potential for happiness and fulfilling relationships, highlighting the constraints imposed by class distinctions. Randolph, Sophie's son, is the character most influenced by social expectations, values his social status above all else, even above his relationship with his mother. Randolph disapproves of the idea of her remarriage to Sam, primarily because Sam is of lower social status. He becomes increasingly cruel and obsessed with social status, damaging his own humanity and sacrificing his mother's happiness. Ironically, Randolph aspires to become a priest but lacks empathy, a quality priests should retain. After her marriage to Mr. Twycott, Sophie moves away from her home village to live in a remote and isolated villa in London. She is physically cut off from her previous life, friends, and family, which contributes to her feelings of loneliness. Sophie feels emotionally isolated because of her loveless marriage to Mr. Twycott. Their relationship is characterized more by friendship and duty than true love, leaving her emotionally unfulfilled. Her isolation is further deepened by her son Randolph's condescending and controlling behavior, which distances her from him. Throughout the tale, Sophie reflects on her past and the life she left behind. She longs to return to her old village, Gaymead, where she felt a sense of belonging. Her isolation is exacerbated by her inability to go back to the life she once knew. As Sophie regrets her choices and contemplates what might have been, she becomes increasingly lonely. Her regrets about marrying Mr. Twycott and not choosing Sam Hobson, as well as her missed opportunities for a different life, contribute to her sense of loneliness and isolation. Later in the story, when she rekindles her relationship with Sam Hobson, he becomes a source of comfort and connection in her life. Her loneliness is briefly alleviated when she spends time with him, reminiscing about their past and what could have been. The Sun's Veto tells the story of Sophie's life, which is filled with regrets and sacrifices. Regret means feeling sorry about the choices you've made, and sacrifice means giving up something important for someone else or for what you think is right. Throughout the story, we see how Sophie regrets the decisions she's made. She wonders what might have happened if she had married Sam, a man she loved, instead of Mr. Twycott. She also thinks about what her life could have been like if she hadn't listened to her son Randolph and married Sam after her husband's death. These regrets trouble her as her life becomes unhappy. Sophie sacrifices her own happiness to please her son, Randolph. Sophie had always felt some regret about her marriage, wondering if she made the right choices in life. She even questions her son's values and wishes he had been brought up differently. Her biggest regret is not marrying Sam when she had the chance. As she stares out at the country roads and pines for her old life, she spots Sam and wishes she could go back in time and marry him. But she never gathers the courage to defy her son's wishes and make that choice. The story ends with Sophie's funeral, symbolizing the end of all her life's alternative possibilities. It's a tragic tale because Sophie never knows if she could have been happier with different choices. Her regrets and sacrifices define her life, and she spends her days wondering about the alternative choices that will never be answered. In Thomas Hardy's writing, fate and determinism play a crucial role. Fate suggests that certain events in life are beyond our control and are predestined. In this short story, Sophie's life seems to be shaped by a series of events that she has little influence over. When Sophie injures her foot, she can no longer work as a servant, which was her original plan. This event seems to be a twist of fate, as it leads her to a different path in life. Sophie marries Mr. Twycott because it is seen as a suitable and convenient match for her. These events seem almost like they were meant to happen, and they greatly impact the course of her life. Determinism refers to the idea that people's lives are determined by external forces or circumstances, and they have limited power to change their fate. Sophie's life appears to be determined by the expectations of society and her son's wishes than her own wants. She feels compelled to make choices that align with what is expected of her as a widow and a mother, even if it goes against her own desires.